In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make a cool looking icon in Photoshop CS4. You can use this icon for like a Photoshop or a Dreamweaver or any kind of Adobe product icon. You can use it for social media icons, just basically any kind of icon. It's a pretty cool little trick that you can do in Photoshop. So right now we're sitting in Photoshop CS4 and we've got a layer in front of us, 200 by 200 pixels. And what I'm going to do is go over and grab the the rectangle tool here, and we're going to use it to make a square. What we want to use is the Photoshop blue. This is not the Photoshop blue, so we'll go and change our color up here to something closer to a Photoshop blue. If you look up on the top left hand corner, you can see the blue up there. That looks good enough right there. That'll work. I'm going to hold this shift key down, and then I'm going to click and drag, which will create a perfect square. And I'm going to make it not the full size, somewhere like half the size of the square we have out there right now. And then I'm going to move that towards the center. And right now we've got the back of what we're trying to do here. The next thing I want to do is put some text on here, the PS for Photoshop. I'm going to grab my text tool over here. I'm going to change the color to a dark gray of some kind. That looks pretty good right there. I'm using 31, 31, 31. And I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to create a new layer. Going over to the Layers panel on the right hand side, down at the bottom, the little square with the tab bent. I'm going to click on that to create a new layer. And now on this layer I'm going to click inside my blue box. I'm going to capitalize the P, and I'm going to lowercase the s, and I can tell that that color is not what I want, so I'm going to highlight that, go back to my colors, and maybe get a little bit darker gray there, something maybe about right there, 19, 19, 19. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to enlarge this PS here. It's a little too small. Make it about 18 point. That looks about right. And make sure, while I'm using right now, you can use any font you like. I'm using Articulate Narrow, and it's bold. Try and make it as bold as possible because the effect will look nicer when it's bold. I'm going to go ahead and check that, and I'm going to try and center this just a little bit on our blue here. The next thing I want to do is kind of stylize this PS right here. And in order to do that, I'm going to double click on my layer of PS, and I'm going to go to Inner Shadow. I'm going to make this multiply, make sure it's black, change our opacity to about 80, and go over to our distance, and we're going to do about 1 pixel by 3 pixels. Depending on the size of your text, the distance and the size might change to larger. If your text is larger, you're going to want to make the distance larger and the size larger to get this effect. But if your text is small, such as this, 1 and 3 will do. I'm going to go to Drop Shadow. I'm going to change the color of the drop shadow to white. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to change the blend mode to normal and the opacity to maybe about, let's go with 20, see what that looks like. That's still not enough. I'm going to use the down arrow key now, and I'm going to keep going down until I feel it's about right. And I think maybe 8. Well, no, let's go back up to 10. 10 should do it. We'll do the distance. Oh, actually, once we change this, I might want to change my opacity back of 1 and the size of 3. Same on this one. And let me go back to my opacity. I'm going to raise it up to about 15. I don't know if you can notice this, but what this drop shadow is doing is creating a white outline around my letters here to make it look beveled a little bit. I'm going to click the checkbox on this drop shadow. Maybe you can see it go away. Keep an eye on the PS. I'll click it again, and you can see it come back. The inner shadow, basically what it's doing is making this text look like it's indented, pressed into the blue. And then I'm going to finish this text effect off with a gradient overlay, and I'm going to keep it on black to white and lower my opacity to maybe about 15. Looks about right. Click OK. And as you can see, we got a nice little text effect going on our PS out here. I'm going to minimize my effects here. And the next thing I want to do is create a new layer. And I'm going to put that layer behind everything. And I'm going to change my color, my foreground color to white. Click OK. I'm going to grab my fill tool, my paint bucket tool, and I'm going to fill this layer with white. And then I'm going to create one more layer and put this above the white layer. Let's name this, cancel, let's name this background. And this layer 2 right here I'm going to name shadow. We'll name this blue Photoshop background. And on the shadow I'm going to grab my ellipse tool. I'm going to change the foreground color back to black. Click OK. Then I am going to, you know what, this blue is a little too large. I'm going to go ahead and highlight my layer of the blue background. I'm going to go Control T, and that's going to allow me to transform this. I'm going to hold Shift and Alt and grab one of these corners. What Shift and Alt does is brings it all in or out together, like so. And I'm going to shrink this just a little bit, maybe about right there. I'm going to click the checkbox. That looks like it could be about right. I'm going to go back to my shadow layer, and I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I'm going to, actually I'm not going to hold the Shift key, I'm just going to draw this shadow behind here. Doesn't really matter the size. I'm going to move this around, click my move tool here, and I'm going to tab, or I'm not going to tab, I'm going to, the left arrow, move that over till it looks about center. And I want to put it right about here to where this drop shadow is going to be right. Actually, let's raise this up a bit, and I'll show you why later. I'm going to put it right up about here. We might change this a little bit later, but for now it's going to do that. The shadow, I'm going to go to Filter, I'm going to go to Blur and Gaussian Blur. I'm going to click OK. What this is saying, it's got to it's got to turn this layer into a rasterized image before it can put an effect on this thing. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to stick with my radius of 4.5. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to lower my opacity to maybe about 50. Yeah, 50. And you can do that by making sure you're on the layer you want to lower the opacity for, going up to the opacity up here in the layers panel, and you'll see a little arrows next to your hand, and you can just slide them left and right to lower that, or you can click on the box here and slide the little slider there left and right in order to do that. The next thing I want to do is create another layer, and I'm going to put this layer on top of everything except for the PS. I'm going to keep that above this one. I'm going to change my foreground color to white. Click OK. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a little rectangle over top of everything, a white rectangle. Then I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'm just going to use the down arrow to push this down until that shadow is kind of just over, or just showing. I'm going to click on my background, and we can see now that it kind of looks like the blue tab is coming out of the white. And if I really wanted to, I could take this new layer and merge it with my background layer, but I don't want to do that. I'm just going to, just in case I want to edit this later, I'm going to double click on the shape one, and I'm going to call it white cover. And so far it's looking pretty cool. I kind of want to grab my shadow here, and I want to grab my white cover, and I want to use the, and I'm going to hold Control, I'm going to click on one, hold Control, click on the other, then I'm going to use my down arrow key while I'm on the move tool, and just move them down just a little bit, just like this. Then I'm going to grab my PS layer, and I'm going to use the down arrow and move it down just a little bit here. And then what I want to do next is put one more effect on here. I'm going to grab my Photoshop background. I'm going to duplicate the layer. Right click on the layer. So you're going to cancel, right click on the layer, go down to duplicate layer. Open that up, name it Photoshop foreground. Actually, let's do Photoshop stroke. Click OK, and then I'm going to Control T on that layer, hold Shift and Alt to kind of move this inside just a tad. Then I'm going to click the checkbox, and I'm going to double click on that layer to get into the Layer Styles panel. I'm going to go to Stroke. I'm going to grab a white stroke, maybe have it 2 in pixel, put it on the inside, and opacity of maybe 80. See what that looks like. Click OK. Click on the background. And as you can see, we've kind of got a cool little feature here. You can do many different things to this as well. Like, let's say you wanted to grab the ellipse tool here with a white foreground color, create a new layer, put this layer on top of everything, even the PS if you want. Actually, let's keep it underneath the PS. And I'm just going to draw a little ellipse over top of this, like so. I'm going to change this opacity down to about 10. And you can see it kind of adds another little effect there. We'll take that, and while we're on the Move tool over here, use our up arrow, move that up just a tad. There we go. And that is how you create a pretty neat social media icon, Photoshop icon, Dreamweaver, whatever you want to call it, icon, and you can use this on all your designs and stuff like that. Thanks for watching. Go to webnewbie.com to watch more videos. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.